Hello, this is Nikita from Plumsail team, and today I'll talk to you about using JavaScript to work with SharePoint fields in Plumsail Forms. So, what is JavaScript? Well, basically it's a language that the browser can work with, and you can change the forms dynamically, change field values, run validation on your fields, hide and show fields, so add dynamic logic to your forms. The language is actually really easy to learn, and we have rich JavaScript API to work with the forms. I'll show you all the basics in this video, just follow along and you'll learn so much with me. So, how can we get started? Well, to begin with, let's go to our JavaScript documentation section in Plumsail Forms for SharePoint. Here you can find the most critical information such as JavaScript editor, form manager, and how to manage fields. More information is available in user guide section. We will also create a list to experiment and to play with different SharePoint fields such as person, lookup, yes, no, numeric field, choice fields, and text fields. So everything that you are familiar with, let's connect to the site in question and let's open list. We are creating forms for the example list, and here to begin with we will create a very basic form. Let's just drop title, right? And we can, well, before we go anywhere, let's check the name of the field. That's very important. We can copy it to clipboard. This will allow us to call this field with JavaScript commands. In JavaScript editor, you can see some examples which might be helpful for you in the future, but they are all commented out. So the blue text is commented out. Don't use it. It's just examples for you to learn. Here are some example variables, right? Window FD will allow you to access them in the window, but we'll get to that. To begin with, let's create just a basic example. We are using FD SP rendered event, right? This is an event which runs when the form is fully rendered and ready. We are ready to work with it. All right. So what can we do? We can, for example, set the title value. Right. Let's just put value equals. Well, let's say hello world, the basics of programming. Right. All right. So this will help us get started. And to just play along with it, to experiment a little bit, let's put window.fd equals fd. This will allow us to access these extra variables inside of browser's consoles for testing. We'll also put $. This is for calling jQuery library, which we can also use from console. Let's save the form. All right, while it's saving, we just have to wait a little bit. All right, the form has saved. Now we can go to browser. We just refresh the list. And when we click new, when it loads, we will access the form and let's see if our JavaScript works. Right? So the field title should have the value of hello world. All right, we open the form. Once it's ready, you see hello world. It's right here. So the title is set. Right, we can open up the browser's console using inspect, for example. Just go to console, right? And we clear on the console of all commands. We can also play a little bit with it here. Let's say we want to change the title. We can experiment and run all sorts of tests in console without using the events. So we can check the value and we can also set it to new value. Absolutely not a problem. So that's how you can experiment and that's how you can set different field values, see what works, see what doesn't work. Right, let's say we want something more advanced. Let's go and add some more fields such as choice fields, right? All three types, checkboxes, we'll change it to checkboxes actually. All right, so let's add some numeric fields. Yeah, we can also position them on the form. Just drag and drop, adjust their size. All right, yep, here we go. Yes, no field. Okay, and maybe a multi-line text as well. This will be good to show you an example of how you can repopulate the form. So we copy the field values, well, field names. and we can use field names to set the values. It's very important that you use correct value type to set it. For example, choice fields, well, they need a string, just like our text fields. Let's set all the choice fields that we have. Right, choice drop down we have set. Let's set the choice radio. We copy the field name here. Okay, we go to here and also set the value. Right, let's say it'll be choice 2. Now, keep in mind that if we have multi-choice column, right, multi-choice field, like choice checkboxes, for example, we copy it here as well. But when we are setting the value, we need to set it with not just a text string, right? But we are using actually an array of strings because it can have multiple values. So it will accept only an array as value. Even if you want to set just one value, it needs to be an array. All right, we go with numeric field. We are setting the numeric field, numeric 1, and we are setting it to numeric value, right? So we don't need the brackets as we need with strings. All right, and numeric 2 as well. Let's set it to something else. All right, let's set it to 200. Finally, we are working with yes, no, yes, and we are setting the value to true because it's a Boolean value. It's either true or false. Yes, no. Finally, multi-line text is also a string, but here we actually need to set it. Well, if we wanted to have multiple lines, we will use special symbol, right? Some text, and then let's write this escape line. Let's go to the next line, and we put a new line of text here, right? So we can have multiple lines of text in one string, right? Let's save. Okay, and let's see when it saves. Let's see how it looks in the browser. Right, so we've saved the form. Now let's go and let's open this form in the browser. Okay, let's refresh the form. Let's close the console. We don't need it right now for testing. So we are refreshing the form. And you can see that all the values are populated here. Absolutely not a problem. So you can have so much pre-populated for you. And it's also possible to do with condition. So much more is possible. That's just an example. All right, let's go for something a bit more advanced, a bit more nuanced. Let's check first what errors you can make, right? So if instead of using the field name, which you've copied, right, you are using their title, and titles will often have spaces in them. So we are adding some spaces, okay, and we are saving, and let's check what's going on. Well, what do you think is going to happen? So we've added some titles. Let's first clear the form of all values. We can use it, well, we can clear it with fd.clear, right? Bam, the form is clear. And now if we refresh it, let's see what happens. All right, so the title is still populated, but then we are getting this error. It's execute custom JavaScript error, undefined value, right? So it's because the fields are not defined. They are not found with their title. You need to use their names, which we can copy, right? So we need to use text. It's very important to use the name to actually refer to fields in JavaScript. That's very crucial. Now, to work with different field types, like single line text, for example, right? Just go and check it in our documentation, how to get and set value, different value types, in number as well, how to get and set field value, right? What field value is acceptable? It's different for all field types. You need to make sure you're using the right one. True or false for yes, no fields, and all things like that are important. So keep close attention to what you find in our documentation. And let's remove all these fields. We won't need them. We'll need just some of them, right? So let's keep the title, right? And let's keep two field choice type. Right, so let's say we want something more dynamic. We want one field to set value for another field. Right, let's disable the choice radio field. And instead, let's just call every field choice dropdown, and let's look for change event. So what change event means? It means that we will only run this function inside on change when the value is changed. So when the value changes, okay, we will run this function. And since we've disabled choice radio, we can just copy new value from choice dropdown to choice radio. They have identical set of choices, so one will be copied to another. So just to add a bit of dynamic to our form, you can copy different values. You can also check for different conditions. If one value equals one thing, you can set the value to something else, but that's just to show you an example of dynamic field change. So choice radio is disabled, as you can see, we cannot set it, but once we change drop down, radio is also set. All right, that's one way to do it. Now we go back, all right, and let's say we add a yes no field. And when the yes no field is true, we will only then disable, right, the field, and only then we will copy. So we are adding conditions. So if fd field yes no, well, let's say when it's true, in this case we are copying value from choice dropdown, right? But we also need to check yes no field. If it's changes, right, we will also run a function with its value, and we want to disable the field choice radio only if yes no is true. So how do we do that? We can just set field, well, choice radio to be disabled when yes no is true. So we are setting it to value. If it's false, it's not going to be disabled. If it's true, it's going to be disabled. We are saving the form, and once again we are going back and we are checking how this will affect our form. So once we go back to the form and we refresh it, right, as you can see, the choice radio is not disabled yet, but when we do change it, okay, it works. And now it copies the value from choice dropdown, and now they are not connected anymore, and the second field is not disabled. But when we say yes no is true, it now suddenly works. But why does it not work retroactively? Why does it not work with yes no is yes by default? So we are only running this function on change, but we can move it away inside of a separate function, disable radio, right? So what will it do? It will disable choice radio if yes no is true, but we need to get the yes no value here. Okay, and it will also, if yes no is true, it will also copy choice radio value, will be populated from choice dropdown value. So it will copy choice dropdown value and populate choice radio value. All right, so we will run this function on yes no change, but we will also run it on choice dropdown change to see how less code we use. And we also run the same function on load. So running the same function allows us to reduce the number of code, but also to ensure it runs consistently. Okay, so let's make sure it's pretty and saved, and let's see how it works on the form. So it will run on either yes no and choice dropdown change, and it will also run as soon as the form is opened. All right, so we see that's how it worked. We refresh, yes no is true, so right away you see it's working, and now it works right? But if we click yes, no, it will reset the value to choice dropdown. So everything is running at once. Everything is running. But if it's no, then it's not changing. And if it's yes, then it is. See, using functions is highly efficient. You can reuse the same piece of code multiple times, and it just works. Now we can use a different function. So for example, a function to show or hide fields. Well, let's think of a condition where this can be a good choice. So for example, we remove fields and we use fields numeric 1, numeric 2, and let's say multi-line text. And depending on the choice in FD field choice dropdown, right? We can set them as they were hidden or not hidden. So first of all, we are hiding the fields. Field numeric 1 we are hiding, and we are hiding numeric 2, and we are also hiding multi-line text. Let's copy its value. All right, let's go and let's just hide all fields, and let's run this in change and also on form load. And now let's check the condition. If of the field choice dropdown value equals choice 1, for example, we will show FD field numeric 1. So it's hidden by default, but if choice equals choice 1, it's not hidden, it's false. We are doing the same. Let's copy. Else if the value is choice 2, now numeric 2 is not hidden. And let's add one final condition. Else, if the value is empty or if value is choice 3, then we are no longer hiding multi-line text. All right, so this is running here on form load, and on choice dropdown change we are saving. So one function to show and hide fields is running on form load and on choice dropdown change. Let's go back to the form. Let's refresh the form and let's see how it works. Oh, you see the fields are hidden, but then you see when we change choice dropdown, when we change its value, fields are either shown or hidden. All right. So now what else can we do? Well, we can add some more fields. And for these fields, we are going to actually give them a CSS class, right? So you can add choice fields. For example, we will group them in choice field class will make us differentiate, like these are some text fields. All right, so we'll split them into sections, kind of, right, to the class. So we add certain CSS class to fields, and let's say, well, number field as well. Okay, so we add a certain class to all the fields. And now, instead of using FD field to target individual fields, we can hide and show them based on their class. For example, let's say that number fields all are hidden. We'll use jQuery to hide them. So dollar class name after dot, and then hide text, and then choice, and then we just hide all of them. Okay, and now instead of choosing hide, we use show. So the same idea, same what we've used before, but now it's not for one field, but for groups of fields based on the class. You can do the same with your fields and show and hide depending on, selection in some field or the answer in some field. You can show and hide certain types of fields or any groups of fields. You can group them in any order that you want. We've grouped by field type, but that's just an example, right? So now we are loading the form, and you see choice 1 only numbers shown, choice 2 only text is shown, choice 3 only choice is shown. So that's how you use jQuery. But let's say we are working with a container, like tab container. Let's group the fields in different tabs. So numbers will go in the first tab, single line and multi-line text in the second tab, and then choice fields will go in the third tab. Okay, when we go to JavaScript editor, now let's rename the functions. This is disable tabs, we'll be disabling tabs. Right, once again, we'll base our choice on choice dropdown just to make an example. Now, at first, right, we are going to access FD container. Let's take the name of the container as tabs1. We are also using the name here. Tabs1. Okay. And now let's access the tabs. And let's make sure all of them are disabled by default. So we are starting from 0 in an array of tabs. So tab 0, tab 1, and tab 2, which corresponds to 1, 2, and 3. They are all disabled. And now let's instead enable them when the choice is either equal choice 1, choice 2, or something else. So we can, instead just enable them. So we are saying disabled false, and that way they'll be enabled. So let's check out how it works. We are saving the form, and the same logic still applies. Depending on the choice and choice dropdown, we'll have fields, sections of tabs disabled. All right, so choice 3 only gives us to tab 3. Now, if we want to do more than disable tabs, let's say we want to hide certain tabs. It's also possible. So let's go to CSS editor, fd form, tab set, disabled, and we write specific rules so that just, display none important to make sure that this is overwriting anything else that we might have on the form. So disable form, and now the disabled tabs should also be hidden, which makes sense. We might not want disabled tabs to be seen. Okay, so you see we have only tab 3, only tab 2, and only tab 1. They still need to be opened, but all the other tabs are hidden. That's one way to do it. All right, so that's how we can work with tabs. What about an accordion? It's also a container. You can also add 3 sections. So let's add numeric fields. Let's add choice fields. Right? And let's add text fields. Okay. Okay. Now in here, we can disable accordion sections. Just rename the function. That's not necessary, but it's much easier to work with functions than you can rename them and call on them as you need them to be. All right, so how do we access steps of accordion or sections of accordion? Let's copy the name of accordion. Accordion 1 is also a container. So instead of accessing tabs, right, we can instead replace this with, well, children. This is the tabs, right? This is the accordion sections, children. And we just replace tabs with dollar and children, dollar children. Okay, and we replace the name of the container. Let's save it. Okay, now if we go back to the form, okay, once it saves, let's go back to the form. Okay, refresh the page. Let's check it. Okay, you see only one section is enabled, but it's not you see the other ones are disabled. Same time, it's not opening by default. That's not ideal. Like, we want it to open as well. Not only other sections to be disabled, but let's actually also open it. So we can do that with the container accordion, not only disabled, but open, true, right? So we don't only open, well, we don't only disable, but we are also opening it. And we are making sure that they are all closed by default. So at first in our function, we disable and close all, all the sections. That's one thing we do. Number 0, number 1, number 2. And then we are opening them as needed. Very useful. You can do so much more with JavaScript But that's just an example of how you can use field values to affect how your form functions. All right, let's check it out. All right, choice 3, you see section 3 is open. All right, if we go and click choice 2, the other sections are disabled, but you can switch between them. You know, with our choice drop down, we are switching between them. All right, so here we have all the code in containers accordion section. Right, so how to hide a container, how to work with the container, all of that is available here. Now let's say we want something else. Let's say we want to hide maybe. Right, so if we want not to disable but to hide, we can access L hidden. And this will allow us to just hide these sections. All right, so yep. With that, I'll wait. Let's save the form. And let's see how it does. Right, so the form is saving. We are going back to the browser. Okay, let's refresh page, and instead of seeing disabled sections, bam, we are only seeing one section, and that's exactly the section that we want to see. All right, that is done. Now, what else can we do? Let's remove the choice drop down. We don't need it for now. Let's work with yes no field, right, and numeric fields. So what can we do with them? Well, we can actually play with some conditions, right? So this field is required. This is title field. It's required. It's set in SharePoint field settings, and this is checked on the server. We cannot affect it, right? We cannot set fields as required on the form because that's just not possible. But we can change the required setting. Let's say require numeric fields, right? We can make them required with JavaScript, right? So the SharePoint server won't be checking the field values in this case, like it does with title field, but we can still make them required for form to be submitted. So once yes, no is true, we will just, let's copy their name and let's empty field numeric 2 and numeric 1. Let's make them required. Or we can just set them to be the same as yes no field. So if yes no is true, then they are required. If yes no is false, then these fields are not required. So let's say numeric 1 and numeric 2. So you're saving the form, and let's test how it works. So it runs on form loading, and it runs when yes no changes its value. So we refresh the page, and let's see, we have only these 3 fields apart from title. And you see, as we switch yes, no, true or false, fields are either required or no. Okay, we can add some values, and they are validated. So they have value, they are required, all good to go. And once again, this is done purely with JavaScript. It doesn't change SharePoint settings in any way. So they are not checked on the server. They're only checked on the form. Now, what if we add some validators? We can add 2 types of validators. So we can add form validators, and they check your form if everything is correct. Let's add one as an example. We're setting name numerics validator, right? And we are setting error message. Let's say that we don't want numeric 2 to be smaller than numeric 1. So numeric 1 cannot be more than numeric 2. So form validators, some conditions that you want to affect all your forms. So let's add validate function. Right, it's a function. So let's see. Well, it's actually a very easy condition. So if the field numeric 1 is, if its value is greater than the field numeric 2, value, right? In that case, we just have to, return false. And in all the other cases, we just return true. So we only wanted to return false when numeric 1 is more than numeric 2. Alright, so that's a condition. But we can also just return the condition. And this will also return true or false. So, plus we want it to be the opposite, right? Or we can just return if numeric 1 is lesser or equal than numeric 2 value. Alright, let's save the form once more. Let's go back to our browser and let's check how it affected the form. So not only these fields are required, but also, well, field 2 has to be larger or equal to field 1. Okay, not only are they required, but if we set numeric 2 as less value, right, numeric 1 cannot be more than numeric 2. Alright, so we have to go down. The other way around works just fine. So you can write all sorts of conditions like that. And they can be extremely helpful if you want to ensure that only correct value is saved. Alright, so other than form value, let's add a wizard container. So the wizard container allows you to complete form step by step. Let's say step 1, step 2. Why do we need steps? Because field validation, right? Not form validation that we just write, field validation. It actually happens in real time. So when you're changing between steps, field validation is happening as well. So let's say the fields are required, you cannot go to the next step before they are, well, before they have a value. But that already works with field validators. So let's say fd field, right? Numeric 1, for example, validators, or we can just use add validator, right? So numeric 1 validator, and condition can be very similar, but we can also use value in this case instead of the field. We are just using the value of the field that we are checking. So if value of numeric 1 is, well, smaller than numeric 2, it's okay if it's smaller or if it's equal to, but if it's bigger, it'll give an error. And let's just add some more fields to step 2 for the example. Okay, so let's save the form and let's open it in the browser. Let's check how it goes. All right. So we are opening the form in the browser. All right, so it's loading. Right, so the form has loaded. And now, well, you need numeric 1 and you need numeric 2. And if for any reason the value in numeric 2 will be less, for example, let's say 5, well, we get field validation error. That's what's the difference between form validator and field validator. So it happens as soon as you change the value in the single field. It's happening. The validation is happening, and you cannot even go to the next step of the wizard. All right. Now let's remove the wizard, and let's think. What else can we do? All right. So another thing that we can do is actually to add, well, an async validator. An async validator is something that checks, well, the form, but it takes time to run. So it's not waiting for you. And if the validator is running, it's usually running before save. So we need to make sure that we handle async validation properly. So in this case, we'll be using PNP, a JS library, to actually access the same list, right, and get previous values and check if similar titles have already been used. If they have been, right, so let's get this list. All right, let's get the items. Let's filter them. And we need to check if title of that item is the same as the title of what we are saving. Okay. Equals to value of title. Okay, and if that's the case, then we are going to use a function with I as an argument. Right, I is for items which have the same title. So we are going to return, well, if there are items with the same title. So we are going to return true if there are 0 items with the same title. And in the other case, we will return false because the length will be not 0. So it's essentially a similar way to enforcing unique value for title, but you can run any sort of async validation. So sending requests to our list, checking for values, absolutely doable. It's just an example that we are using here for simplicity. So if we already have the same title is not unique, try our one. But if we use a different title, it's unique and you can save the form. So it's just checking for unique titles. Now, finally, we are working with person and lookup fields. And how does that differ? So these fields are a bit more unique, and there are other field types like that, but person lookup, something what you'll encounter quite quickly, is that you can't access them and FD is pre-rendered right away. So instead, we are using ready as well. So we use FD as pre-rendered here. And we are also using the ready event. So that to make sure that the fields are loaded and they are ready to work with. And inside the ready event, we can already interact with them. So for example, we can set new values. So for a person field, this will be like setting my name inside of it. Okay, it's ready. And let's make sure that lookup field, it's ready. Okay, we can set lookup value with, we can set it with a number value, right? So that's a ID of the item that we want to set. And let's reload the value. So we reload value, so it loads not only ID, but also the text, and it's updated, and it's all nice. Let's save the form. Let's go back to the browser. And let's check it. Okay, so when we open it in the browser, you see my name is populated inside of the person field, and you see the item is populated inside of lookup. Now, final brush, let's check out how to work with some display forms. Right, so the difficulty here might be that some field types, for example, such as choice checkboxes, so multi-line choice, instead of giving access to value as normally, we can only access display value, which is its value in the form of a string, but we can write a function which will let us access the value and check for different choice types. Right, so if it's, let's add another accordion, for example, and inside of that accordion, yes, we will check if it can actually be, well, let's first disable or hide. Yes, let's hide all the accordion sections at first. Okay, and then we can just enable them based on choice in choice checkboxes. So it can be multiple sections which are open. So if choice 1 is yes, and if choice 2 is yes, like that way we can also open, let's say, all sections of the accordion or some of them. Okay, let's save the form and let's open it in the browser. Go. Okay, let's add some values to choice checkboxes and let's open some display forms and see, you see the accordion sections opened only when we have value selecting choice checkbox. Now, that would be it for this tutorial. So we worked with different field types in SharePoint. We've also worked with functions, added some validation to our forms, populated fields. We did a lot of things here. We worked with display form, new form, so it can also be explored. Edit form. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our support team and we'll help you out. But you can also find a lot of our information in our documentation, a lot of examples, and we hope this video will also help you learn and get better writing your own code for your forms. So, hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and we'll be back with more information for JavaScript API and all the functionality of our forms on a later video. Stay tuned. See you.